Ready to have your mind bent a little? Today we're taking a deep dive into Ludwig Wittgenstein's Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. It's a book that famously grapples with the limits of what we can say about, well, anything.
Now, I know the Tractatus has a bit of a reputation, right, for being, well, a tough nut to crack.
Yeah.
It's dense, it's structured in these numbered propositions,
Right.
and it's full of philosophical jargon.
It's like Wittgenstein took all the big questions, about language and reality,
Yeah.
squeezed them all into this tiny, intense book,
Right.
and then handed it to us with a pair of philosophical tweezers.
Absolutely, and it's absolutely worth the effort. The Tractatus isn't just about, dry, abstract concepts. It's about how we understand the world, how we communicate, and what it means to bump up against the limits of what we can express.
And to think, he wrote this in the trenches of World War I. Talk about intense thinking conditions.
It's true, yeah, the context is important. But even if you're not huddled in a trench, you've probably had moments where words just failed you, right? Moments where you felt like there was more to say than you could ever put into language. That's the territory Wittgenstein is exploring here.
So how does he even begin to unpack something that huge?
He starts with a pretty radical idea, and that is this. The world isn't just a collection of things, it's a structure of facts. Imagine a jigsaw puzzle, right, where each piece represents not just an object, but a specific relationship between objects.
So it's not just that there's a cat and a mat. It's the fact that the cat is on the mat that matters.
Exactly. And those facts, according to Wittgenstein, are built up from what he calls atomic facts. Think of them like the smallest possible units of reality, the bedrock of existence. He even imagined these atomic facts existing in a kind of logical space, similar to how objects exist in physical space.
Okay, I think I see where this is going. If the world is like this giant interconnected web of facts, where does language fit in? I mean, we use words to describe the world, right?
That's exactly where things get really interesting. Wittgenstein argued that language, specifically the propositions we use to communicate, are like pictures of those atomic facts.
Pictures. But a sentence, like, the cat is on the mat, isn't a photograph.
True, it's not a visual picture. Think of it more like a model. Imagine a lawyer using a model to explain a car accident in court. The model represents reality, not by looking exactly like it, but by showing the relationships between things.
So the words cat, on, and mat are arranged in a way that mirrors the arrangement of those objects in reality. It's the structure that makes it a picture, not the visual resemblance.
Precisely. And this is where Wittgenstein makes a distinction between saying and showing. We use language to say things about the world, but the logical structure of language itself, the very thing that allows it to be a picture of reality, is something that can only be shown, not said directly.
So it's like we can use a map to show someone the way to, like a hidden treasure, but we can't use the map itself to explain the concept of north. That's just inherent in the structure of the map.
You got it. And this leads us to one of the most mind-blowing aspects, I think, of the Tractatus, the idea that there are limits to what we can express with language. There are certain truths that we can grasp, that we can understand implicitly, but that we can never fully articulate with words.
So there are things we can show, but not tell. Huh. It makes you wonder, what else might we be sensing or experiencing that lies beyond the grasp of, our current language?
That's a question Wittgenstein grappled with throughout his life, and it's something we're going to explore further as we go deeper into the Tractatus.
Okay, so if there are things we can, show but not tell, how do we even begin to wrap our heads around them? It's like, knowing there's a hidden room behind a wall, but not having the key to open the door.
Wittgenstein would say the key to that door isn't more words. It's a clearer understanding of how language itself works. He wants us to pay attention to the underlying logic, the structure that makes language possible in the first place. And that's where his concept of truth tables comes in.
Truth tables. Man, I remember those from, logic class. That sounds a bit technical for a casual conversation about the meaning of life.
I hear you, but stay with me. Truth tables are actually a really powerful way of seeing how the truth of a statement depends on the truth of its individual parts. Think of it like a recipe, right? Like, if you change one ingredient, it can totally alter the outcome of the dish.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Give me an example.
Okay, let's take a simple statement like, it's raining.
Okay.
That statement is either true or false, right? It either is or isn't raining outside right now.
Makes sense so far.
Now, let's combine that statement with another one. I'm holding an umbrella. We can connect those two statements with the word and, like this. It's raining and I'm holding an umbrella. For that whole statement to be true, Both parts have to be true simultaneously. If it's sunny outside and you're holding an umbrella, the statement is false.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward. But how does this help us unlock the deeper mysteries of the Tractatus?
Well, Wittgenstein uses truth tables to break down these logical relationships in a really systematic way. And by doing so, he highlights something fascinating. The fact that some statements are true by definition, but don't actually tell us anything new about the world.
You mean like those, like the sun is either shining or it's not kind of statements?
Exactly. Those are called tautologies. They're always true, but they're also kind of empty. They don't give us any new information. On the flip side, you have contradictions, which are always false, like a square is also a circle.
So it's like these extreme cases, the always true and the always false, they reveal something fundamental about the limits of what language can do.
Exactly. Wittgenstein called them senseless, not because they're nonsensical, but because they don't point to anything specific in the world. And by showing us these limits, these edges of what we can meaningfully say, he's also pointing towards what lies beyond those limits.
It's like he's drawing a map, but instead of filling in all the countries and continents, he's outlining the edges, the coastlines, showing us where the known world meets the vast unknown.
That's a brilliant way to put it. And it's precisely that vast unknown, the realm of ethics, aesthetics, the meaning of life that Wittgenstein wants us to grapple with.
Okay, so how do we even approach those topics if we can't pin them down with language? Do we just I don't know, throw up our hands and say, well, guess we'll never know?
Not quite. This is where Wittgenstein makes a crucial distinction. He's not saying we should never talk about these things, but rather that we need to be aware that language can only take us so far. We need to find other ways of approaching them, other modes of expression.
So what does he suggest? Charades? Interpretive dance?
He was a big fan of art and literature. He saw them as ways of showing what couldn't be said directly, of conveying truths through experience and emotion rather than logic and, argumentation.
It's like that old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Sometimes art can capture something that would take pages and pages to explain.
Right. Exactly. And Wittgenstein believed that this wasn't just true for visual art, but for music, poetry, even silence itself. He saw these forms of expression as ways of pointing towards a deeper reality, a reality that lay beyond the grasp of our everyday language.
So it's not about abandoning language altogether, but about expanding our repertoire, using all the tools at our disposal to make sense of the world and our place in it.
That's a great way to put it. Now, to get even deeper into this idea, we need to unpack one of the most perplexing concepts in the Tractatus, Wittgenstein's notion of the unsayable.
Oh, here we go, down the rabbit hole. What exactly did he mean by that? Was it like this mystical realm of silence that we can only access through, I don't know, meditation or something?
Not quite. It's not that these unsayable things are completely inaccessible to us. In fact, Wittgenstein believed that we encounter them all the time, often in the most ordinary aspects of life.
But what makes them unsayable if we're constantly bumping into them?
It's not that we can't experience them, but rather that we can't fully capture them with language. Think about trying to describe the taste of your favorite food to someone who's never tried it.
Yeah.
You can use all sorts of metaphors and comparisons, but ultimately they'll never truly understand until they take a bite themselves.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like trying to explain a color to a blind person.
Yeah.
You can talk about, wavelengths and light spectrums all day long, but you'll never be able to convey the actual experience of seeing red or blue.
Exactly. And for Wittgenstein, many of the most important things in life fall into this category of the unsayable. Things like love, beauty, morality, the meaning of life itself. We can gesture towards them with language, we can circle around them with our words, but we can never fully pin them down or define them.
It's both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time, isn't it? It's like we're constantly brushing up against this vast unknown territory, but we can never fully, chart it or conquer it.
That sense of wonder and mystery is precisely what Wittgenstein wants us to embrace. He believed that by recognizing the limits of language, we open ourselves up to a deeper, more intuitive way of understanding the world and our place in it.
It's like he's saying, don't be afraid of what you can't say. Lean into it. Let it move you. Let it shape you. But how do we even begin to do that? If language can't be our guide, what else is there?
This is where things get really interesting, because Wittgenstein believed that the very act of living, of experiencing the world, is itself a kind of showing. Our actions, our choices, our relationships, they all reveal something about our values, our beliefs, our understanding of what truly matters, even if we can't always articulate those things in words.
So it's like our lives become a kind of language, a way of communicating something deeper than words can express.
Exactly. And that's a powerful idea because it suggests that meaning and purpose aren't something we find out there in the world, but something we create through the way we live our lives.
It puts a lot of responsibility on our shoulders, doesn't it?
No pressure, right?
Just go out there and live a meaningful life, even though no one can tell you exactly what that means.
That's the beauty and the terror of it all, isn't it? But remember, Wittgenstein isn't leaving us completely in the dark. He offers us glimpses, hints, directions for how we might navigate this uncertain terrain. And one of the most important of these is his emphasis on the importance of seeing the world aright.
Seeing the world aright. It sounds like the title of a self-help book.
Yeah.
What exactly did he mean by that? Was it like achieving some kind of like, I don't know, philosophical enlightenment?
It's less about reaching a final destination and more about adopting a particular way of looking at things. Imagine putting on a pair of glasses that suddenly allows you to see the world in a whole new light, to perceive connections and patterns you never noticed before.
So it's about clarity, about seeing things as they truly are without the distortions of our like preconceptions and assumptions.
Exactly. And for Wittgenstein, one of the biggest obstacles to seeing the world aright was our tendency to get caught up in the traps of language, to mistake words for the things they represent.
It's like we get so used to using maps that we forget that the map isn't the territory itself.
Precisely. And Wittgenstein wants us to break free from that map-obsessed mindset, to engage with the world directly, to experience it firsthand without the filter of our preconceived notions.
But that's easier said than done, isn't it? I mean, we're constantly bombarded with information, with language, with other people's interpretations of reality. How do we even begin to, like, clear away all that noise and see things with fresh eyes?
It's a lifelong practice, a constant process of questioning, of challenging our own assumptions, of being willing to let go of what we think we know and embrace the unknown. And for Wittgenstein, one of the most powerful tools for doing this was philosophy itself.
Philosophy is a tool for seeing the world differently. It's not just about, like, sitting in armchairs and debating, obscure theories.
Not for Wittgenstein. He saw philosophy as a way of life, a practice of constantly refining our thinking, of sharpening our perception, of clearing away the linguistic cobwebs that obscure our vision.
It's like he's saying that philosophy isn't about finding all the answers, but about learning to ask better questions.
Exactly. And those questions, those doubts, those uncertainties, they're not something to be feared, but embraced. Because it's in those moments of not knowing, of grappling with the limits of our understanding, that we open ourselves up to new possibilities, new ways of seeing, new ways of being.
It's a humbling thought, isn't it? To think that the more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know.
It is humbling, but it's also incredibly liberating. Because once we let go of the need to have all the answers, we free ourselves to explore, to experiment, to embrace the mystery and wonder of existence.
And that brings us to one of the most important and controversial aspects of the Tractatus. Its implications for how we live our lives, how we make choices, how we relate to each other.
Now you're getting to the heart of it. If language can only take us so far, and if the most important things in life lie beyond the realm of what we can say, where does that leave us in terms of, ethics and morality? Can we even talk about right and wrong if those concepts are ultimately unsayable?
These are huge questions, and ones that feel incredibly relevant today, right? I mean, we're constantly bombarded with information, with different perspectives, with conflicting values. It's easy to feel like lost at sea. Did Wittgenstein offer any guidance, any kind of compass for navigating these ethical dilemmas?
He did, but it's not the kind of straightforward moral code that some people might expect. Wittgenstein believed that ethics, like aesthetics, belonged to the realm of the shown rather than the said.
So how do we know what's right and wrong if we can't rely on, I don't know, rules or commandments? Does it all just come down to personal preference or gut feeling?
Wittgenstein wouldn't say that our ethical intuitions are arbitrary or random. He believed they were deeply connected to our understanding of the world, to the way we see ourselves and our place in it.
Okay, but how does that translate into, concrete action? How do we know what to do in any given situation?
This is where things get really tricky, because Wittgenstein was wary of offering any kind of universal ethical system. He believed that the right course of action always depended on the specific context, the particular circumstances.
So it's not about following a set of, I don't know, predetermined rules,
Hmm.
but about developing a kind of ethical sensitivity and awareness of the nuances and complexities of each situation.
That's a good way to put it. Wittgenstein believed that ethical decision-making wasn't about applying abstract principles to concrete situations, but about cultivating a certain kind of attentiveness, a capacity for seeing the world and the people in it clearly, with compassion and understanding.
It's like he's saying that ethics is less about having all the right answers and more about asking the right questions, about being willing to grapple with the ambiguity and uncertainty of life.
Exactly. And that's a challenging but also incredibly empowering message. It means that we're not bound by rigid doctrines or dogma, but that we have the freedom and the responsibility to figure things out for ourselves, to create meaning and value through our actions and interactions.
It's a lot to wrap our heads around, but in a way, it's also incredibly liberating. We're not just like cogs in a machine blindly following orders.
Mhm.
We have the power to choose, to act, to make a difference in the world.
And that choice, that action, that difference, that's ultimately what Wittgenstein wants us to focus on. He's not interested in building grand philosophical systems or providing easy answers. He wants us to live our lives with intention, with awareness, with a deep appreciation for the mystery and wonder of existence.
So we've been talking about this idea of seeing the world the right way.
Right.
But if language can only take us so far, if so much of what matters is like unsayable, how do we even begin to find this clearer vision? It's like, I don't know, it's like we're lost in a forest and Wittgenstein has given us this compass that only points north.
That's a great analogy, and it highlights just how radical Wittgenstein's philosophy really is. He's not offering us a map, a set of directions, or like a guaranteed path to enlightenment.
Right.
He's saying, look, we're all lost in the woods in a way, but instead of pretending we know the way out, let's just pay attention to our surroundings. Let's learn to navigate by the stars, to read the language of the forest itself.
So it's less about finding a predetermined destination and more about developing a certain kind of awareness, like a sensitivity to the world around us and to the ways in which meaning reveals itself, even in the absence of words.
Exactly. And this is where his famous ladder analogy comes in. Remember, he says we should use his propositions as steps to climb beyond them. And then, once we've reached a certain height, we should be willing to throw the ladder away.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful image. It's like he's saying, don't get too attached to my words, to my theories, right? Use them as tools, as stepping stones, but ultimately you have to find your own way.
And that finding your own way isn't about, rejecting philosophy or logic altogether. It's about recognizing that they have their limits. Wittgenstein wants us to use all the tools at our disposal, reason, intuition, experience, art, to make sense of the world and our place in it.
So it's not about choosing sides in some kind of, like, I don't know, intellectual battle between logic and emotion, but about finding a way to integrate them, to let them, I don't know, work together.
Precisely. And this is where I think Wittgenstein's own life story becomes so fascinating. I mean, here's a man who was trained as an engineer, who was deeply drawn to mathematics and logic, but who also had this profound appreciation for art, for literature, for the power of music. He understood that the human experience can't be reduced to, cold, hard facts, that there is this whole other realm of feeling, of intuition, of unspoken understanding that's just as important, if not more so.
Yeah, makes you wonder if he hadn't had that, like, more intuitive artistic side, would he have even been able to see the limits of logic in the first place? It's like you need both eyes to see the world in three dimensions.
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? And it speaks to the importance of embracing the full spectrum of human experience. The rational and the emotional, the logical and the intuitive, the sayable and the unsayable. Wittgenstein understood that these weren't opposing forces, but complementary ones, two sides of the same coin.
So how do we actually live that kind of integrated life? A life that honors both the power and the limits of language.
Right.
I don't know, it's easy to get like caught up in our heads to, I don't know, overthink everything, to analyze our experiences to death.
It is, and I think Wittgenstein would be the first to admit that it's a constant struggle. He himself grappled with doubt, with uncertainty, with the feeling that words often failed him. But that's also what makes his philosophy so relatable, so human, right? He's not offering us a set of easy answers or a foolproof system. He's saying, look, this is hard. Life is messy, but that's also what makes it beautiful, makes it worth living.
It's a message that feels incredibly relevant today in a world that's constantly trying to sell us certainty, simplicity, easy solutions. Wittgenstein is reminding us that sometimes the most honest answer is, I don't know. And that's okay.
It's more than okay. It's essential. It's in those moments of uncertainty, of not knowing, that we open ourselves up to new possibilities, to different ways of seeing the world, to a deeper understanding of ourselves and others.
So maybe seeing the world right isn't about achieving some kind of like perfect objective understanding of reality, but it's about embracing the mystery, the ambiguity, the fact that there will always be more to learn, more to experience, more to question.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. And ultimately, I think that's the greatest gift that Wittgenstein offers us. A sense of humility, of wonder, of open-mindedness, and a deep appreciation for the profound mystery of existence.
It's been quite a journey exploring the Tractatus with all its twists and turns and mind-bending propositions. I have a feeling I'll be revisiting these ideas for a long time to come.
And that's the beauty of Wittgenstein's work. It's not something you just get in one sitting. It's something you wrestle with, you come back to, you let simmer in your mind.
It's a bit like life itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Full of questions without easy answers, but all the more meaningful for it. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Wittgenstein's Tractatus. We hope it sparked your curiosity and inspired you to keep exploring the limits of language, the nature of reality, and the profound mystery of what it means to be human.